All right, here we are back, continuing the ET48 Tekno E build. Couple notes. I like, the arms, they come on the tree and they're like super thick. And so I like to use these end cutters and you just get them like up nice and close and clip them off. I'll put these in the description, but they're super handy to get this stuff really close and have it looking good. And then the stock build, it uses these plastic sway bar bushings or collars to secure the sway bar, and I've used these before and I don't like them. I feel like they're a weak point, and so I did purchase, Tekno makes aluminum versions of them. Here you go, it's right there. I will put that in the description. And then I'm not sticking with the book setup. The book uses a rear sway bar of a 2.3 millimeter, and I'm actually going to go with the 2.4 millimeter in back. And so I have purchased that set of sway bars from Tekno for that. So yeah, let's get into the build here. It's baggy rear end assembly. All right, so the manual, it actually starts with installing this sway bar on the rear gearbox, but I don't know, I find that irritating. I don't think I'm gonna do that first. I'm gonna actually start building up these arm assemblies and do that first. And so the first thing to note on these arm assemblies, there's 2 screws, a total of 3 here, but these look very much the same. But if you notice, 2 of them actually have a hex head in the tip as well as on the head. And you want to make sure those 2 are the ones you install in here for the droop measurement. Those are your droop screws. And so I'm going to actually put those in first. They go in from the bottom here. And you just work them in like so. Make sure you get them in straight. The surface is a little hard to visualize, but drive those in like so. We'll use the convenience of the power tools here. And so for now, I'm gonna put these in. I'm gonna screw them in all the way, but that's actually a setting that you are going to want to set later, and we'll get into that at the end when we start talking how to do setup items on this truggy. Put this other one again, make sure you get the right screws for this, because that other one looks essentially identical to these droop screws. If you don't get the right ones, it's going to be really hard to adjust your droop once you have this thing all assembled. So that is the first thing I'm going to put on. The next thing here is these arms, these bushings go in these arms. And they can be a little tight. I just stick them on the table like this and push them in, like the edge of the table helps. You just kind of start them by hand. And push them in. Just make sure you get them pushed all the way. You can see where there's no gap under those bushings, and if there is a gap, then you need to push them a little bit further. So let's plug these in on both sides. There go. Got those bushings in the arms. Okay, so next up we're going to do this sway bar assembly, and I'm going to put all these ball joints in with these ball link pliers. That's in there, and once you snap them in, just make sure they're free. I will put the link to these ball link pliers in the description. Sometimes if you just pull the link up, it'll snap right in and help you to not push them all the way through. Put those in. There we go. Man, those are so handy. So much easier than using pliers. Especially when you want to pop them out, it's really easy. So then I'm going to install these into the arm. And so, you know, these point back. The shock goes in the back, so these little collars here point back, and they're going to be secured with this longer screw here. And I'm just going to put this in now because I find it easier to go ahead and do this when this is not completely on the car. Just make sure that you don't, there we go, don't mar up that aluminum. All right, and this doesn't have to be super tight, you know, just snug. Okay, so yeah, the next step is we're gonna stick the arms on the gearbox. And to do that, you use these aluminum pieces. This one here with the feet is the D block. And this one here with the nub in the middle is the C block. In the manual, it actually shows there's like a notch out of here in the top, which appears to be a running change by Tekno. They changed that, so there's no notch there. Hopefully that doesn't make you confuse you and make you think it's this one. This is the C block. And when we're going to install the pills in these blocks first, and you can see there's a recess in these blocks, so the pills go in that side, and you push it into that recess until they sit flush. And so again, I'm not following the manual, and I'm using the center dots for this C block. So those there in the C block. And actually, I guess the manual does use center dots in the C block. And then the D block, the manual also uses center dots, and I am not going to use those. I will show you which ones they are. It's the 2 dot to the bottom outside corner. So those there on the D block. And so these pills, they allow you to change rear toe, arm sweep, and also anti-squat. And so those are all just tuning features that can be used. So yeah, we're gonna stick this C block on here like so, using these 2 screws going into that hole. This thing is not cooperating. Make sure that you get that peg pointed the right direction. You know, if you ever get in a situation where you're struggling to hold everything and get the thread started, you can always pre-thread these. It's actually a lot of times easier too, just to make sure that you get these in straight. But you can pre-thread these before you actually put this aluminum piece if you need to. It can make your life easier. Just make sure you get these in straight. I did not do that greatest on that one. Okay, so let's bring out the power tools here. Tim Allen style. Crank that up a little. Those are tight. I'm gonna have to go with full max torque on these ones, man. They're definitely tight. Okay. And that is in there. So we got that C block on. Then you're gonna bring these arms over here. And again, these are gonna go with this point, the shock mount pointed aft. You're gonna bring those over here. Put these pins in. Those are actually surprisingly a little bit tight. So I'm gonna, there we go. Okay, so we're gonna stick these pins in these, and I noticed on mine they're a little tighter than I normally like, but I'm guessing they'll free up maybe a little bit, hopefully. But let's see how they feel once we get everything mounted on here. So again, shock mounts go back, sway bar mounts forward. And then, you know, the final step here is we put this D block in the back and these little tabs point forward. Then you want to grab the hinge pin here. This thing's not cooperating, so I'm going to turn it over. You know, you have to kind of pull this out because you got this controls the rear toe. Pull that one out. There we go. Okay, so then finally here, we're going to stick this one little smaller screw in here to hold this back one in. Normally most cars have two on both sides. The Tekno, because it grabs the bottom, they only put one in here. Also allows just a little quicker maybe disassembly. I mean, the biggest thing, you know, I talked about these arms is, you know, you want these arms to be, I noticed there's a little bit of a slop in this side. You can shim that But these arms, you want them to drop under their own weight, and they feel a lot smoother than I thought they were going to feel when I felt that before. But yeah, I might end up shimming that just so it's a little bit less in there, but per the stock manual, this is how much gap is in there. Okay, so then the final thing here is to put this sway bar on, and you're going to put these bearings back in here like so. Actually, I'm going to turn this around so we can see a little easier. So you put those bearings both in there, and then I like to make sure my numbers are pointed up, so I point those numbers up, and you feed this sway bar through like so. And then you can either use the kit provided plastic ones, or I'm going to use these aluminum ones. And I am going to get just a little bit of thread lock on here just so these screws don't find themselves out. If you're using the plastic ones, then you don't need thread lock, just for the metal ones. And so I'm just going to thread that in there, and just make sure that this set screw goes in freely. If it's not, you're slightly crooked. So just make sure you're getting it in freely. If you force it, you're gonna strip those. Okay, so we got those in, and now the key here is the narrower end, this end here, it goes into the bearing. So you push this and it goes into the bearing. And then same with this side, you'll push this in and it goes into the bearing. So I'm gonna flip this like that. And so you want to adjust these such that the sway bar, I'm gonna have to flip this way so I can actually see this thing. Maybe. Okay. So yeah, you want to adjust this so the sway bar is centered. And then, now that I got one of them in there, I can show you easier. But the other thing you want to do is you want to make sure these screws are tightened at the same spot. Like if you have one of these screws like pointed up and the other one pointed out, this thing it'll bind. And I didn't get mine actually perfect, and it's already kind of you want to get these things. I like to target when this sway bar is level, that these are level as well, these screws. It's a point of reference. So yeah, you just need to make sure those screws are pointed at each other. And I can already see that I didn't get this sway bar exactly centered either, so I'm gonna go futz with that and then I'll show you guys. Okay. So you can see now that I got these screws are both pointed straight out, and you can see this thing, it moves nice and freely. You should check this because if you get those tightened differently, it'll move weird. So just make sure you get those to where they're tightened the same. Okay, so we got that in there. So the next step here is we hook them in at the top. And again, I'm going to use a little thread lock because we're going into metal. So we'll stick just a tiny bit. It doesn't require a lot of thread lock on these. And you want to install this sway bar. It comes out of this ball end and it's flush. And we'll do this final one here. Put a little thread lock. Again, not a ton. Okay, so we got that sway bar hooked up, and then the final step here is you just want to make sure that everything's moving freely with that sway bar hooked up. And the other thing I like to do is I like to push up on this arm, and like it's pretty instantaneous, and I just like to make sure that when I push up, they both react the same. When you push up on the left arm, the right one moves at the same timing, etc. So I just like to check that. That all looks good. So that concludes Bag E, and I hope you guys found this video useful, and feel free to put comments in and like and share this video and subscribe. Thanks.